In the outhouse, the storm pushed snow against the boards. Through the thin walls, music thumped, until footsteps crunched past, slow and close, as if someone was taking their time. I held my breath, waiting for a laugh outside. Instead, the cabin went dead silent. Back before Mara and I accepted what we were to each other, we did everything couples do, just without the word. Winter was our common language. Snowboards in the trunk, wet gloves drying on the vents, that quiet you can only afford when you think nothing bad can happen in daylight. Her family had a small cabin in Mount Bachelor, tucked far enough into the hills that the maps stopped naming things. She invited me up for a weekend. Our first time riding together, like it was a normal milestone, and not a door we'd both been circling. The highway gave way to two-lane roads, then to a narrower road that climbed, and curved through trees so packed together they felt like walls. Every few minutes a driveway would appear, just a slit in the snowbank, leading into a private darkness swallowed up by evergreens. Some had no tire marks at all, no footprints, just smooth snow, untouched, like the houses didn't exist until summer reminded them to. Mara told me most of the cabins were owned by people from out of state. They come up for a week, she said, watching out at the tree line. Then they lock everything and leave it to the snow. The farther we climbed, the more the world thinned out. The last car we passed seemed like an event. "Slow down," Mara said suddenly. "It's coming up." I tapped the brakes, and for a second, all I saw was trees and snow. Then an opening appeared, so narrow I would have missed it if she hadn't pointed. A rough track dipped into the woods, with the car crawling between branches bent low under the weight of winter. The cabin looked like a secret. One story, dark roof, windows half buried behind curtains of frost. It looked cozy in the way photographs do, like warmth could be assumed just because you're tired of being cold. Inside, it was colder than outside somehow. The air had that locked-up smell, dry wood, old smoke, a light sweetness of pine that appeared stored rather than fresh. We turned on the heat, dumped our bags, and made an easy dinner out of what we'd packed. Later, we watched a movie by the fire, and a lamp made the corners of the room look deeper than they should. It had heat. It had electricity. It had everything except running water. No plumbing, Mara noted, borderline apologetic, waving at a row of plastic jugs lined up like supplies for a siege. We wash with that, and the bathroom is outside. I only needed to pee before bed, so I went onto the front deck and did it right there, laughing into the cold as the snow consumed the sound. Our alarms went off before sunrise. Fresh snow pressed against the window like a clean sheet. We made coffee and ate quickly, excited in the simple way you get when there's untouched powder waiting for you. I pulled on my boots and went out toward the outhouse because I didn't want to waste time at the resort. The cold hit me hard enough to make my eyes tear up. Halfway there, I noticed a set of prints near the corner of the porch. They weren't ours. They were already there, stamped into the snow, heading along the side of the building. The impressions were deep, big enough to be boots, but the spacing was wrong. Too long. They wrapped around the cabin in a slow arc and then vanished within the trees. "Mara," I called. She came out with her hood up, blinking against the cold. I pointed. She leaned down, squinted, then shrugged like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. "Bear," she said. "Black bears. They're everywhere. Probably came sniffing around." It didn't look like paws, but the day was waiting. I used the outhouse fast, ran back, and we drove out while the sky was still turning gray. At the resort, the world turned bright and loud. Lifts groaned. Boards slapped against hardpack. People laughed in little clouds of breath. Mara and I rode until our legs shook, chasing the cleanest lines we could find. By afternoon, we were pleasantly wrecked, the kind of tired that makes you careless. We ate at a diner on the way home, thawing our faces while having coffee. By the time we turned onto that winding road again, night had already laid itself over the woods, and snow started up, forming into a steady curtain. The drive back felt longer than the drive in. Headlights hit trunks and branches and nothing else. When the cabin finally appeared, it looked smaller than I remembered. Less like a secret, more like a mistake we'd driven into. Inside, we cranked the heat and lit a fire. Mara put on music, something upbeat, almost aggressively normal, and we poured drinks like the night could be kept harmless if we moved fast enough through it. The cabin warmed. Our cheeks blushed. For a while, the dark outside stayed where it belonged. Then my bladder decided for me. "I'm going out," I said, already pulling on my boots. "Don't take forever," Mara called, still smiling, but her eyes followed me to the door a second longer than they needed to. The storm hit me as a shove. Snow bit my face, driven sideways by the wind. I jogged to the outhouse and yanked the door shut behind me to keep the snow from blowing in. Through the thin walls, I could still hear the music from the cabin. Muffled bass, a steady beat holding me to the idea that Mara was safe and warm 10 yards away. Then, over the music, I heard another sound. Crunch. Crunch. Footsteps in the snow, passing the outhouse close enough that I could feel it through the ground. "Mara?" I called. "Is that you?" No answer. The footsteps kept going, unhurried, not circling like an animal, just walking, like someone who knew exactly where they were. I pulled my phone out and typed, "Are you outside?" The message hung there, undelivered. No bars. I waited, listening hard enough to hurt, telling me it had been wind, or snow sliding off a branch, or my imagination trying to make a story out of a sound. Then the music stopped. Not faded, not turned down, just cut, instant and total. The silence that took its place was enormous. I finished quickly, hands quivering despite myself, and pushed the outhouse door open. The night was darker than before. The cabin windows were black. The porch light was gone. The firelight that had been flickering through the curtains was gone too. Power outage, my brain offered. In the mountains, in a storm. I turned on my phone's flashlight, and the beam showed fresh prints in the snow. Newer than the ones from the morning, edges distinct, cutting a line from the outhouse toward the cabin. They went straight to the front door, and then veered to the side, moving around the house the way the earlier ones had. I moved fast and banged on the door with the side of my fist. "Mara!" I shouted. "Mara, open up!" For a heartbeat, nothing. Just snow ticking softly upon wood. Then the door cracked open and an arm shot out, yanking me inside. Mara slammed the door shut, locked it, and leaned her back against it like she was holding something out with her spine. Her face was pale in the dark, lit only by my phone. She shook her head hard once. "Don't talk." Then she moved close enough that her mouth brushed my ear. "A man tried the handle," she whispered. "Right after you left. I locked it. He kept testing it. like he had all the time in the world. Her eyes flicked toward the living room window. "I turned everything off," she breathed. "I hid. I saw him walk past the window." She swallowed. He looked in, like he knew there would be someone here. Mara pointed toward the floor near the fireplace. "There's a hatch," she whispered. "My dad keeps, just in case." We found it by touch. When I lifted it, a rectangle of deeper darkness opened, breathing cold air into the room. I climbed down into a cramped cellar that had the odor of earth and metal, my phone light sliding over shelves and a wall rack. I took what I could handle, climbed back up, and closed the hatch gently, like the sound of wood settling might be an invitation. We sat closely on the couch in the dead house, not daring to turn anything on. The fridge's low hum sounded wrong without the rest of the cabin around it, as if it had become a voice. Minutes lingered until I could feel my pulse in my teeth. Then the footsteps returned. Crunch, crunch. Slow, deliberate, crossing the yard, coming close, stopping. A shadow moved across the thin curtain. The door handle turned once, softly, like a question asked politely. Mara's hand reached mine in the dark. Her fingers were ice cold. The handle turned again, a little harder. I stood, more instinct than courage, and stepped to the door. Through the wood, I thought I heard something that might have been breath, or the wind searching for a crack. I opened the door fast and raised the barrel toward the sky. I fired up into the storm, a warning engulfed by white. The sound echoed off the trees and came back hollow. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, faint, rapid footsteps retreating, the crunching pace broken into a scramble. The storm erased the direction. The dark kept its secrets. We locked the door and sat with our backs against the wall until our eyes burned from refusing to close. When dawn finally seeped in, it wasn't relief so much as a thinning of pressure. In the gray morning light, we went outside together. The yard looked calm, almost innocent, covered in fresh snow. But the prints were there, cutting through it as scars. They circled the cabin. They halted beneath the living room window long enough to churn the snow into a shallow depression, and no clear tracks were leading away. We called Mara's father when we got enough signal. His voice came through thin and crackling, but the urgency was clear. Leave, now. We packed without speaking much and drove out with the trees closing in on both sides, like a tunnel that didn't want to let go. Miles later, when the mountain finally gave my phone a full set of bars, it buzzed once in my lap, and Mara's message from the night before appeared, time-stamped while I was still sitting alone in the outhouse. "If that's you knocking, stop."
Like, share, subscribe.